Hey guys, so I'm going to be presenting my UbD unit. I'm going to go through it very fast. I've recorded this video at least 20 times. Every time YouTube says it's way too long. I have a cranky 4-year-old waiting for me. I have dinner on the stove. So we're just going to do this very fast. My unit title is Counting and my subjects is Mathematics. I did this for kindergarten. I'm currently a preschool teacher. So I figured it'd be easier just to take a step up rather than jump into a new grade completely. I don't do lesson plans like this for my preschoolers. These lesson plans that I do take me about an hour for a whole unit for a week. This took me 5 hours. So I do stuff way simpler. I don't do anything like this, so it was new for me. I'm going to skip reading my overview. I'll just give you a quick one. Students in kindergarten will be expected to rote count to 100 using 1s, 5s, and 10s. They'll be expected to count objects in a set, do cardinality counting, and write numbers 0 through 20. We're going to skip version 1, the initial sketch of the 3 stages, because version 2 lays it all out. In version 2, starting with my transfer goals, they are to count to 100 by 1s, 5s, and 10s. Count forward by 1s from any given number up to 100. Read, write, and represent numerals from 0 to 20, and count to answer how many. And all of these are based on Arkansas standards for math for kindergartners. For the understandings, students will understand that numbers and counting are a part of our everyday life. Students will understand that numbers can be represented using objects, words, and symbols. Students will understand that counting finds out how many in objects or sets. And students will understand that you can count forward from any number as long as the correct sequence is followed. And then a misunderstanding of cardinality counting is predictable because students are used to counting from 0 to 10 rather than counting from 5 to 10, or counting from 10 to 15, or I'm sorry, 0 to 15 rather than 10 to 15. It's going to confuse them starting in the middle and going. So we're going to work extra hard on that. My essential questions are: why do we count? What does counting tell us? Why are numbers important? And how many ways can a number be shown? For knowledge and skills, students will know that we count to find out how many. Counting tells us how many. Numbers are important because they're everywhere and connected to everything we do. Numbers can be represented using objects, words, and symbols. And in the skills, students will be able to count to 100 by 1s, 5s, and 10s. Count from any number to finish the sequence, answer how many, and read and write numerals 0 to 20. For my acceptable evidence, we have rote counting as a performance task and mouse count as a performance task. And for other evidence on both of those are test and quiz, and then for mouse count there's a reflective journal as well. Very quickly, the grasps for these 2 tasks. Task 1, it is my goal to discover how far my students can orally count by 1s, 5s, and 10s, and discover how many numbers my students can write from memory. The role of the students is to count as high as possible, like I just mentioned, and write as many numbers as they can, again, like I just mentioned. My audience is the students, and the students' audience is me. They will be presenting individually to me for the oral portion, and for the written portion, only I will see their work, and it will be put into a work sampling portfolio for them to later review. The situation is one-on-one at the teacher table while the other students work on counting worksheets. In the product, students will perform counting to the highest number they possibly can, and they will also write as many numbers as they can. There's 4 traits that it'll be counted by, all 20%, counted by 1s, 5s, 10s, written numbers, and the test. Task 2, it is my goal to see if my students can count how many objects are in a set and count from a number that is not 1 to reach a number further in the sequence. The student's role and job is to be a detective. We'll explain a little more about that in a minute. My audience, again, is the students, and the students' audience is their peers and the teacher. The context is groups of 3 stations at different places in the room. Students will perform detective work to count how many objects are in a set with their group partners. They'll also collect a number of objects from around the room. Teacher will give them a certain number of objects to start with, a number of objects they'll need to have in order to be finished with their detective work, as well as writing a few sentences over that activity. Again, the standards and criteria are broken down into 5 traits: counting objects, cardinality counting, group work, reflective journal test, and again, they're all graded by 20%. We're going to skip the AMT of the learning plan, as well as the where to. I probably didn't fill that out anyway, so you guys aren't missing much. And we're going to skip right to the sequence of the learning assessments. Starting with option 1, the calendar, I'm just going to quickly go over it and then jump into my sequential lists. On Monday, we'll introduce the unit and we'll give the students an overview of the unit. We'll do pre-assessments and we'll start teaching counting to 100 as well as writing numbers. On Tuesday, we will introduce counting by 5s and 10s to 100. And we'll have students practice writing numbers again. And then they will redo the pre-assessment as well, and that'll count as a test. On Wednesday, we'll review counting by 1s, 5s, and 10s and writing numbers. We'll start our mouse count lesson, which is counting sets, and we'll have students practice writing their numbers again. On Thursday, this is a very big day, we will review counting, we'll review writing numbers, and we'll review counting sets. We'll do the mouse count lesson again, but this time over cardinality. We will review everything again, and then we'll have another test as an assessment. On Friday, we'll review everything. Students will have a chance to look at what they missed and correct it, and then we will connect the unit to what they previously learned and what they're going to learn. So very quickly, my sequential list of key events. We're going to introduce the unit. We're going to give students an overview of the unit. We'll do a pre-assessment. We'll teach counting using a number grid. And then the students will use tracing sheets. We'll introduce counting 5s by 10s, counting by 5s and 10s using manipulatives. Students will do worksheets again. We'll expand by asking students to do this by memory and giving corrective feedback and having students practice writing numbers 1 through 20. The students will then redo the pre-assessment, and then we will review counting and writing numbers again. We'll start our mouse count. We'll start our mouse count lesson. We'll practice counting sets using materials such as bingo chips, pencils, and as a treat for the students, we'll do M&Ms. First, they'll do it as group members and then as individuals, and each student will have a worksheet to complete as part of the work sampling. To expand, we'll give students mixed materials and ask them to count only one object. We'll review by counting 1, 5s, and 10s, writing numbers, and counting sets. We'll continue with the mouse counting lesson, this time with cardinality. We'll do the detective work I explained earlier with the performance task. We'll review again. They'll do the test. We'll then review yet again. We'll look over the work sampling portfolio with the students. We'll give students a chance to correct mistakes on the test following the review, and then we'll connect the unit to learning about counting to 10 in pre-kindergarten and counting to 120 along with addition and subtraction in first grade. Whereas if these were my preschool students going into kindergarten, they would connect it to learning about counting to 50, because that's what we do in my class, and then counting to 120 along with addition and subtraction in first grade. My thoughts on this unit, really I don't know how well it would go over or how well it would not go over, since I have not gotten to implement it into a class and got to do my checks and reviews on it. The activities I have planned, now that I'm looking, I wish that I would have done a little more with the rote counting. I'm sure it seems a little boring to the students just counting from memory, but it's a sure way to assess. It's a get in there, get it done, see what they know kind of thing. I really like my mouse count lesson. I think that'll be really fun. I like integrating the literature. The students will benefit from the unit by, it'll be a building block for them. They will they'll learn what they need to know for first grade. Took me a minute to get that one out. And then how will I reach all of my students? I will always be sure to incorporate something that reaches every student, like I do right now. I always include something that's tactile, something that's auditory, and something that's visual, just so that every learner can take something away from the lesson each day. So that is my unit. I'm sorry I had to go through it so fast. I'm hitting 10 minutes now, so I still feel like that was a pretty long time. I want to thank you guys for taking the time and listening to me. I hope you kind of took something away from it. And I hope you learned something from your unit as well. Maybe it'll get a little easier when it's time for us to actually do these. Thank you guys.